This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from LiLLiPub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Book. Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 31. Random Generators and the Unexpected.
Welcome to the Zettelcast. I'm Victoria here with my shady and funny colleagues. And today we are going to bring you all the way into the process of how do you take these random cards when they're just around. Maybe you've got something from experience, you've got a character idea, you've pulled something out and you're thinking, ooh, hey, that's interesting. I have no idea why. We're going to show you what it looks like when you actually take an idea for a scene and you use note cards straight out of the Zettelkasten to put that scene together. So that is the challenge of the day. Let me pull it up and I can give you a more exact rendering of what that looked like. Okay, so my prompt is: use the power of the +1 to create an impromptu scene in real time. So I've asked everyone to choose either by a blind grab out of their note box or by selecting something that maybe they thought would be interesting. It's totally up to each author to choose. And then the storytellers are going to wrangle that into a cohesive kind of scene storyboard, if you will. The important idea is, it's often, and I think we've all experienced this, seeing cards in close proximity to one another often is the catalyst for how you put a scene together or how an idea comes together. A lot of people think you have an idea for something that you're going to write and you sit down on page 1 and you start writing and you write it all the way through to the end until it's the end and you're done and you close the book. That, my friends, is not how it works. So today's exercise is to prove that. So I've given us a verbal prompt, which is, it wasn't like we ever thought about it. So this is keeping in line with story theory that I firmly believe in, which is often, not always, but often, great stories begin with some sort of question. The question can be outright stated in the beginning, like Sally ran into the room and asked, holy cow, why is there a body on the floor? Or it can be something very subtle and it just hints something to the reader that pulls them into the story. Either way, often it starts with a question or some kind of curious event or curious observation. So it wasn't like we ever thought about it is our prompt for today's creation. So does anybody want to dive in and go first? Do we have any brave souls that want to throw out a card?
I will throw out a card because I think it actually fits in pretty well with your initial prompt. So I pulled this from my story ideas section in my Zettelkasten, and it is just an idea of a setting and sort of a bit of a plot. So the setting is a factory or anywhere else. There is a running count of days without a safety incident. You know, we've all seen the signs. It's been X days since whatever.
Right.
At the beginning of each scene, advance the count by 1, and each scene has a near-miss catastrophe, perhaps in the background. Maybe the main characters don't even notice. And there never is an event to reset the counter. Sort of a waiting for Godot sort of vibe, I guess.
That's awesome. That's good. It wasn't like we ever thought about it. That's really good. So, does anyone have a contribution? Did anybody pull a character card? Does anyone have a character that we can put into this scenario? No characters? Okay, that's all right. Because the next thing that we need is we need a point of view. So we have our setting, which is the factory. Thank you very much. And we have a bit of a plot. We have kind of the loose structure for a sequence of events that could happen. So since we don't yet have a point of view character, does anyone have a card or something that fits in to this scenario? It can be something directly related to it or something ancillary. Like if someone pulled a card where there's something happening outside, we could put it outside the window. Does anybody have anything that fits? Or do you have something you just want to throw out and we can fit them together later?
Well, I took the randomness quite literally. So
Okay.
since I've got multiple drawers in Zeek over here, I couldn't just go to a random card. So I went to my index and I slid my fingers across and pulled a random card out of my index. And then since that index card has multiple lines on it, I held it over and held it up to the light so I could see that I was pointing to something that was real, but couldn't tell what it was. And then I flipped it over.
Excellent.
And so the card that I drew was an old one from my Zettelkasten. Doesn't even have all of its proper features. And the tagline from the card is "Study until your subject writes itself." And the card itself says it's from Zettelkasten, The Intellectual Life. And so the secret of writing is to stand and study things ardently until they speak to you and themselves determine their own expression. So now I could think that ties into Mel's very well, because it's like the events happening in the background that the main character doesn't notice. These are trying to speak to the characters.
Yeah. That's good.
You could even make a character that is trying to embody that ideal that Sertalanges gives, but is completely missing the obvious things that are happening. So this character is trying to investigate, trying to understand, and is focusing on all the wrong things. It's one way that it could be incorporated.
Excellent. So,
Well, that
So if
reminds me of one of the ones that I pulled out.
Oh,
okay.
I had a bunch. And this one, I'm riffing off of what Mel just said, and also what you said, Kathleen. So this card comes from well, it has a whole lot of sources to it, but it kind of was inspired by page 63 of Scott Shepherd's book, where he talks about this term, the availability cascade. And my understanding of it is that you've got this very elegant, potent way of communicating, and that it's been co-opted, oversimplified, taken out of context, and people have run with that out of context nature of things where they're in fact missing the original point.
Sounds like what's happened to woke. But anyway, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So, I love starting kind of as the first principle, the idea that we have a character that's focusing on the wrong things. It's like not seeing what's right in front of you, not seeing the forest for the trees. And that's being fed by the availability cascade. Like all of the things in this environment and also in the character of this person are contributing to essentially thwart them at every turn. So seriously, just in this little piece of this exercise, we've already identified our potential antagonistic forces. And what's really cool is it's both internal and it's external. So in terms of writing and developing this character, it gives you all kinds of play, especially if you start using the character traits, for how you can challenge and trip this person up. Then it's just a matter of drafting out, what does that look like? So, like you could literally start with the opening, like of the signage. It's been X number of days since an incident. So like that drops your reader into the scene, which automatically asks the question, where are we? Why are we counting accidents? You know, they immediately start wondering about this. And then you introduce our sweet misguided character who, and you can play it either way, and you could write it either way. You could write it as something that's kind of funny, like, you know, every day is a Scooby-Doo moment, where it's a near thing, but not quite, but they're going to misinterpret it. And then they're going to come back the next day, still scratching their head, like, what's happening here?
How many bullets died?
Right. And you could totally lean into the humor if the people around this character, as I said, it wasn't like we ever thought about it. If the people around this character are like, what is going on with this guy? Why is he so clueless? Or why is he focused on, you know, the respirators when we've got disaster over here, impending doom, you know? So already we've sussed out several different directions that this scene could go. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my card in here because I think it adds a different complexion to the story development. The card that I pulled is from chapter 8, section 803 of my book, Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers. And it's Nancy Kress's research on how to write flashbacks. I literally just reached in and pulled a card out of a pile at random. And incidentally, this was in with character cards. I have no idea what it was doing in there, but I intended to pull a character out, and I got this instead. The Zettelkasten. So the notes that I took on how you effectively include flashbacks, and maybe a little bit about what that looks like, is, first of all, you want to root the reader firmly in the character's present. So like they need to know where they are, oriented in time and space in the story. Remember that adding a flashback always slows the story down because your reader has to make the time shift, get oriented, and then see what's happening in that past time that's going to inform what's happening in the present. You want to make sure that you relate the flashback to something tangible. Don't just throw in a random flashback and not relate it to something. And it should also provide some kind of a deeper knowledge of either the scene or the character, which is why I am throwing this in now, because we could have something that is something from their past, maybe a memory, something that informs why this person is this way now. And if we lean into the humor, it could be something, you know, something ridiculous. I mean, he spent an entire afternoon following an ant with a magnifying glass to see where it went, thinking it was going to solve some sort of problem. I mean, it could be anything that shows us that this character is not afraid to dial in and, you know, go down the row. Then Kress argues that a flashback should always have a price. So use it with caution, because that could be read either way. Either it has a price for the character, but also remember, in consideration of your reader, a flashback always distances your reader from the story for a short time. So you risk throwing them out of the story altogether. So I'm kind of glad that I pulled this out, even though it's not what I was hoping for, because it gives us another lens that we can use to show who this person is and why.
Maybe Deb has her character. We haven't heard from her yet.
I have this thing. Muddy mind, molasses mind. You know what? But that's what came. That's what I have. Never thought about it. Molasses mind. What does that mean? And in the context of this story, is that is somebody who's moving through the thing, in slow-mo, and everybody else is going, you know.
Ah,
I don't know. Molasses mind and money mind, those two things, but molasses mind. Yeah.
Maybe that's the flashback. Maybe that state, that mental state of slowness, inability to focus, inability to process information, maybe that, if we flash back to something that shows that, is where our sweet character has come from, which has led them to then develop this maybe hyper focused or focusing on the wrong things. It's the way that they behave now is a consequence of having had that past experience.
Yeah.
So then how did
the solution gone wrong?
yeah
Well,
Yeah.
whenever that last safety incident happened, my immediate thought was of some cynical person who works in that factory who consistently puts unkind images of what happened in that previous incident. It's like,
Yeah.
it could have been awful.
right yeah
350 days since Joe fell into that wood chipper.
that's that's awesome.
And our sweet character feels like he could have done something.
Right. And becomes fixated on that thing. Yeah. And so now you have all the components. We've developed out the setting based on the first prompt and a little bit of the direction of how this needs to go. And literally, that's all we have. Then we have a reason for why this person has developed this, this misguided focus. I love having the trickster on the daily count. That's fantastic. We have our flashback, which maybe gives the character a little more color and shows, that muddy mind and why it is the way that it is. And then all we have to do is land it. So in the landing, you ideally, let's say we're just talking about a short story here. Ideally, you want to mirror something from the beginning so that it brings the whole thing to a closure for the reader. Now, if we go with the Godot route, the end is the end. So after we have watched, what transpires over the course, maybe the ending is there's just another day without incident and that's it, which for this kind of story would work perfectly. It's not like you have to have bombs blowing up and people solving world problems. It's a perfectly encapsulated scene world, and we already have a character to drive us through it. So that's the purpose of the exercise. Even if you don't end your drafting period or your writing period with a completed scene, or even with a minimum viable unit, which is just, sketching it out in prose, if this is all you end with, and let those details live on the page, like I literally drew them out in kind of a diagram so that I could see how things might relate together or what could lead to what. So I'm sketching out a plot model. If this, it could be that, or it could be this. You're just letting your brain think those things through. Even if this is all you end up with, and go, mow the yard or take a walk, take a shower, whatever you do when you're just mulling things over, and then come back and look at it fresh. Literally, this is all that you need to draft out a scene. And we did it with 5+1s.
wow.
In 24 minutes.
Yeah.
The system works if you use it. And that was just at random. And I would add the bonus caveat is the more random the things that you choose from, often the better it is. Because especially with new writers, a challenge my students often express is, well, my scene is stale. Like, I have the person, I have the thing, they do the thing, I don't even like it. Well, maybe it's because you know too much about what happened and you need to shake things up a little bit. That's the value of pulling a random card, especially if you do it from, like Kathleen did, just pick something off of an index that you're not even looking at. Because sometimes, again, it's the plot model. Either that idea is going to send you this way in an aha, yeah, that's what I want it to be, or it's going to send you this way. Okay, that is so not the direction I want to go. Either way, it's taking you the next step in the process. There you go.
And I would argue this kind of, open relating mindset is really what you practice every day with the Zettelkasten. I mean, this was a very focused attempt at it, but when you go to index a card, if you know, yes, this belongs in my story, but before I file it away, I'm going to look at what other stuff that I have that's not in my story that could have even a tenuous link that's kind of tasty.
Yeah. I that happened automatically for me too when I pulled my card at random, because immediately the first thing that popped into my head with this was, until they speak to you and themselves determine their own expression, I couldn't help but think of the story elements that we added to Roanoke last time, where we were listening to three different stories created by three different people that seem collectively to have their own expression. And so I was thinking, now, how could this be used for, in Roanoke? And I didn't come up with anything concrete, but you were definitely right, Julianne. Those wheels started turning.
Yeah. Well, I love the conceit of having so many days without an incident. I mean, that totally fits into the Roanoke world. I don't know how, but
Yeah.
it fits the atmosphere perfectly. So that has to be used somewhere.
Somebody
And
may
then,
have thrown out the airlock.
right, right. And then, someone focused on the wrong things. That also kind of fits our ethic for our characters. So, I mean, I think we've got some good details that could be kind of pulled out into story threads if we go that direction. But yeah.
If you were doing a film, you could have, that board incrementing daily and have the same guy in the background operating this machinery. And then just randomly, one day since our last incident, and the same guy's there, but his arm's in a cast.
That's good.
Yeah. Now that gets into,
I like it.
how are we going to define incident?
Right? Nice. Very good. Very good. Well, this was even better than
I love this exercise because I, perhaps in a fit of insanity, have volunteered at a upcoming arts festival to sit in a tent and write flash fiction on demand on a typewriter.
Wow.
You are crazy.
Yes, they already have a poet.
Art, but better.
Yes, they already have a poet. Actually, the poet laureate of West Virginia is going to be in his own tent doing poems on demand. He did it last year, but the problem is that the writers are sort of in a separate building from the rest of the arts festival, and last year we had trouble getting people to come to the literary part. So I was like, well, we should have a series of tents that sort of lead people up to where we are. And she's like, well, do you have an idea for another tent? And I'm like, oh, well, I have a typewriter and I'm pretty good at flash fiction on demand. So sure.
That's awesome.
I do have some training here because I used to take part in this flash fiction challenge that was run on a forum like 15 years ago, where the participants would log in on a Friday night or a Saturday. It was over a weekend always. We'd get a prompt and you'd have 1 hour to submit something. And,
That's cool.
you know, 1 hour to come up with it, write it, submit it. And then we'd spend the next week critiquing and reading and guessing and, you know, having fun with it.
That's
So,
awesome.
you know, that was excellent training. I did that for like a year and a half, like almost every week. So
Yeah.
I got this, and probably should practice a bit first, though.
So will you be
We have
bringing
faith.
Flavis Universalis to the tent with you?
Quite possibly. I had it with me last year. Actually, I was inviting people to ask about Zettelcast and nobody did. So I need to be more proactive in, you know, telling them why they should ask about it, I guess.
Yeah. You need a big sign with an arrow like, what's this? Ask me.
Yes.
Cool. I love that. I can't wait to see how it goes. I want to do that. That would be fun.
You need a live stream.
Okay.
That's a possibility.
Oh, wow.
That is a
Do that.
possibility.
Well, yeah. You could, oh God, if we could Zoom it, then we could all be there.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, ready, set, go. That would be fun.
Yeah, there's Wi-Fi out there, so it's doable.
Cool. Well, then you could have your tribe with you. Like those game shows where like you can phone a friend. And they'll be like, Julianne, pull a card, quick. All right, well, should we go to our second exercise? All right, so the second one is pretty straightforward. A section that you never suspected would become part of your Zettelkasten, just something that grew out of something that's totally unexpected.
That t-shirt, because I'm gonna take a Velcon again this year. And I'm
Anyone?
after 80, so.
Well, I'll go ahead and go. And in a strange way, my entire Zettelkasten is that, because when I started my Zettelkasten, I was nearing retirement and I was going to study linguistics. Well, my linguistics section got co-opted by a whole bunch of other things, mostly Zettelkasten. And anyway, the rest is history. So in a sense, it's all like that. But to have a pocket within a pocket, because that's scarcely a pocket now, I have a card that came in that it's related to art, which Mel knows that I'm kind of retarded in that area. I've taken a few baby steps in that direction, but it's definitely not in my history or in my personal self-image. But somehow a book came to my attention by Greg Boyle and Fabian Deborah. And the name of the book is Forgive Everyone Everything. And it's an amazing art book where the art is street art from LA. And the images are just very riveting. And the book also tells you what's going on in the people's lives. And it relates
Cool.
of, violence, imprisonment, all kinds of things that get to a very, very deep level. And then yet you get to find out that there are real human beings inside the caricatures, and you get to really know them. And it was just profoundly evocative. And so this was just one of the stories. So it kind of popped into a very fledgling area on art, which hasn't grown much, but it was fascinating to me because now, of course, it links directly back to the character traits in a way that needs to be studied at a profound level. Because there's something amazing about choice and redemption hidden in that book.
Area.
Very cool. Didn't see that coming.
Okay, well, that's fine, that's fine.
Anybody else got one?
Well, let's plan on that and then have Rose
My
maybe.
deal on addiction came out of the blue as far as I'm concerned, because I didn't have any thoughts initially of writing anything about addiction, or even revisiting the fact that I had gone through this smoking thing and with my aunt and all of that stuff. There was no thought initially of, I would have to go back through the tapes or through something to find out exactly how it is that I even started on that. But somebody said something, and my response was, "Oh, I did blah 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 blah," and here I am doing a deep dive on addiction. So that's where I am. That's my surprise. You know, my surprise. I was going to say exit, but actually entry. You know.
Nice. Yeah, cool, cool. I think that's how it happens. Either you trip over something or you find something that like just catches your attention. But the cool thing is it's saved in your box and now you have that.
On the subject of something that has caught my attention, which I didn't expect, just a few days ago, I was going down a bit of a rabbit hole about the Tree of Life diagram, which is from mystical Judaism, Kabbalah. And I was just looking up the history of this diagram, and I discovered that the earliest known version of it, instead of being a more vertical version, which we have now, it was actually more of a wheel. And the Tree of Life is meant to be a depiction of the universe and of God, and it's very mystical. And so that original, the oldest known one, comes from a manuscript that's dated to 1284 in Spain. And I'm like, well, who else do we know who was working in the 1200s in Spain and making diagrams of God?
Right?
I feel there has to be a connection there. Now I have not reviewed everything or even a small fraction of all of the information that's available on LiLL, but of what I've seen, there's been a lot of speculation and research into his Islamic influences, but I have not yet seen anything about how he was influenced or may have influenced himself the Jewish mystical traditions. But it sure looks like there could be a connection here with the similarity of the diagrams in the same time and the same place. So that is an open question for me. I have nothing more other than a question at this point. Are they related, and how, if so, what direction does it go? Who affected who? But it's something I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for in my travels and researches.
Well, are you also going to compare how the wheel version of the Tree of Life emerged into the tree structure that we see, and what would happen to LiLL's diagram if it unfolded into a tree?
That's an interesting question. I will now.
Well, I would say that there isn't any one topic or kind of card that has surprised me. But I will say that I have been very surprised by, I don't know why I don't have it. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Kathleen, you created a YouTube series on your channel about creating vision cards.
Yep.
And yeah, you're ahead of me on that. So I've been working through mine, and so mine started out as a list of things that I mentioned in kind of dialogue with myself over the past year. And I wanted to do something with them instead of just stop talking about them. And so I went through and I made a list, and it was 63. I think I've talked to you all about it. There was 63. So I was surprised. I continue to be surprised that there were 63 things that in the span of 1 year, I was very interested in pursuing. I see value in all 63 of those things. And so I knew that this is kind of what got me into the Zettelkasten in the first place, this suspicion that there is a connection with all of these things that interest me. I didn't really know how many of them there were. I would have thought under 10. Now, some of these things can be arranged hierarchically, but some of the doing that is going to be a force fit for a lot of them too. So I think that's just the nature of what happens with the Zettelkasten is that ideas explode. They all seem really, really juicy. And even in the intro of our Zettelcast, there's this wonderful clip of Kathleen going and that can be fun, but it can also be like, yikes. Right. It's like, chill, girl. I can't process all these. It's like overstimulation can happen. So yeah, I'm surprised at how easy it is to get in that mode now of just thumbing through the ideas, just add my personal reflection, blah, 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 add my taglines, and then, you never do know, and it's just gonna punch you. Oh my God, this and this and this and this.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you said that the way that you did, because it's strange to me in some ways how we have these relationships with a notebox. Like, it can make me feel bad. It can make me feel like shameful that I haven't done this thing that I set myself out to do and didn't get to it. It can make me so ridiculously excited. I'm like a little kid. It can blow the top of my head right off. Like you just said, you start looking at something and then there's that and there's that and there's that. And all of a sudden I just need a nap. It's a very visceral, very evocative tool if you allow it to become that. And for me, that's the coolest part of it. Is you're fully engaged, like all of you. It can make me angry, horrifying when I dropped all my cards on the floor. Yeah. It's all in there. It's all in the box. So I have two that really, the first one, it's not that there wasn't kind of precedent for it a little, because when I was writing my novel, I was just very tangentially looking at a few different story structures because I was trying to decide how I wanted to structure it. So, I consulted a couple of the classics, Plot Structure by Bell, Narrative Dynamics, books that I knew well. Yeah, I just kind of thumbed through them and got a heading for what I was writing, but that was it. It wasn't until I went down the road of writing the Zettelkasten for fiction writers, not only retracing my own footsteps, but hopefully laying some new ones, that I acquired like 9 more sections of plot modeling and plot structure and, architecture of story, all this stuff that I never in a million years thought, since I'm not formally teaching anymore, it never occurred to me that I would go down that road. But, you know, as you said, it just evolved out of the things that I was interested in and doing and became necessary. So that's the nonfiction one, which is, you know, independent of the book that I'm writing now for writers. My box was built almost exclusively to support my fiction. So without question, the strangest, like, I can't even believe I'm making cards on this, comes from when I was, and I don't want to give spoilers for my novel, but when I was researching how the higher level forces of the story work and fit together, I went down the road of the Archangel Raphael. So all of a sudden I acquired all of these cards from books on archangels, mediary angels, and fallen angels. Now, Daddy, my father, was really into like the Book of Enoch, some of the non-canonical Bible stories, and he was just fascinated by this stuff. And I mean, we would have, you know, random general conversations about it, but it wasn't something I was interested in. I was just an active listener because he was so excited about it. So when he passed, of course, I inherit all of his books. I have no intention of ever going down this rabbit hole. And I come across a passage, this is probably probably more like 8 months ago. I came across a passage and it mentions, I think it made mention to Genesis 6 about the giants. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's the stuff Daddy used to read about. So I can turn the camera and actually show you. So now over here, I have this whole section of books on fallen angels and giants and various books of the Bible, all of this stuff I never intended to do any reading in or care about. But I thought, you know, that could be kind of a cool story component for when I get into book 2. So I'm like, all right, Daddy, here we go, bring it on. So now I have all of this stuff on, you know, angel arcana. And of course, then Mel and I were joking about how we love ourselves a good conspiracy theory. So then when you really start getting into the rabbit hole, it's like, you know, do we know anything about anything? I don't know. But yeah, I even somehow and I would only share this with you guys, and of course the 48 million viewers that are going to watch this, I even ended up, my friends, with a book on flat earth. That's when you know you've ended up someplace you did not intend to go. So yeah, I can make nothing of it. I make no claims. They're just the books that showed up. So yeah, never intended for that section to be in there.
That is funny.
Yeah. I'm like, Daddy, what are we doing here? Give me a break.
Just laughing.
Oh, absolutely. He's having a hearty laugh. Because I would be like, you are nuts. You've lost your mind, sir. What are you talking about? And now here I am, turning pages into the night. It's all right. It'll show up in the book somewhere.
When does your book Zettelkasten for Conspiracy Theorists come out?
Oh, God. Not another one.
Free bonus gift coming up.
What is it? What is
You need
it?
some
When you
additional
write a
equipment.
Right.
You need
Absolutely.
some additional equipment for that one. You need a pin board and lots of strings so that you can pin your cards up to it and make the connections visible.
I could do that. I could do that. Yeah, why, Kathleen, does this happen to you or Mel? After you write a book, everyone who knows you comes across something and they're like, you need to write a book about that. I'm like, stop. I think I've got 5 or 6 in the queue now. I'm like, guys, stop. I need more time. No, it's fun.
Well, if
I do
you
hear my commit to
are
writing
enjoying
novels.
this discussion, since it went quiet for a moment, I'll sneak in a plug for LiLLiPub. We meet regularly on LiLLiPub, we have so many wonderful little subgroups. We have a subgroup on Zettelkasten. We have a group on Roanoke, fiction writing, the character traits, Guild of Explorers that Mel leads. So pop on over to lillipub.org and see what all we have to offer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes my shenanigans for this episode. So thank you for playing. This was fun. And
Yeah.
hopefully we prove to our readers that it really does work.
I know I can count on you to come up with a title. Who do we have for next week?
Whose turn is it? Well, I could do it because I won't be there the following one.
Okay. Kathleen always puts us to work.
That's good. We need that.
Give you plenty of time. I think Victoria gave me plenty of ideas. And you too, Julianne. I loved your question that you threw out on over there in LiLLiPub,
Which was that?
which was how your Zettelkasten can become a prompt to action.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great too. I even went down a rabbit hole on that myself and submitted a little paper. So it's only a one pager thing but I put it in our shared file.
Cool.
Infusion writing?
No, for Zettelcast.
Oh, okay. This shared area of Roanoke. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah. Because that I thought that was I actually thought it was I would use the adjective brilliant question. Brilliant question, because it makes you reevaluate what you're doing,
Yeah.
And then during that reevaluation, you have an opportunity to purposefully direct yourself, toward something that is that you have deemed worthwhile, so yeah, brilliant question, I think.
Well, I mean, just for the benefit of people watching this who have made it this far, the question was, and it was actually inspired by going through the vision box, but it was if you viewed your +1 as being an excellent marketer of your own ideas or of ideas to you, what would you do differently? What would you do the same? What would you keep doing?
Yeah.
Because you get into it and there is a certain kind of a similarity to social networks, right? You got your hashtags. They just don't have a hash in front of them. And you got your thumbnail titles.
But that was that phrase, that metaphor that you used, market your Zettelkasten as a marketer of actionable
yes, true.
ideas.
Yes.
Actionable ideas. And that's the triggering thing, right there. That the inclusion of the word actionable.
Yep.
That's what makes me think it's a brilliant question.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You always.
No, thank you for clarifying that what it was that resonated with you. That's great.
Yeah. That's it. I went down a definite rabbit hole, and so I submitted that one pager, and then when I was rereading the one pager, I was thinking, well, what does that look like, and what does this look like, and how do I do this, and wow, can I do this as well, kind of thing. And so that was another rabbit hole, but I didn't publish that one. I just I kept that one.
You just teased it for us.
Huh?
You just teased it for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, the idea when you look at start doing and then you say, well, for example, one of them says tag notes as actionable, tag notes as an actionability rating with an actionability rating,
Ah.
right?
Mhm.
And so you say to yourself, well, what does that mean? Actionability rating, right? And then there you go, trot down, you know, chasing down that idea, you know. So it's a great question. It's a great question because you end up with a, you know, it's a trickle and then it becomes a waterfall, you know. So
May it be ever so.
Avalanche.
Well, shall we finish up this recording?
I think so.
Uh,
Bye-bye.